It was one of those nights where silence felt too heavy, pressing against the walls of the house as though it had a secret to keep. The wind outside barely stirred, and the only sound I could hear was the slow ticking of the old clock in the hallway, the same one my late husband had repaired years ago. I sat on the living room sofa, absently turning the pages of a book I wasn't reading. The lamps cast a warm glow, but even their light seemed hesitant, flickering slightly like it too was holding its breath. My daughter Lily had been asleep for hours, or so I thought. Then I heard her small footsteps from the hallway, soft, uncertain, the kind a child makes when they're not sure if they should speak. I looked up, smiling. "Can't sleep again, sweetheart?" I asked, but Lily didn't smile back. She was pale, her eyes wide, her hands twisting the hem of her nightgown. "Mom," she whispered, her voice trembling. "There's someone upstairs." At first, I wanted to laugh it off the way I used to when she'd wake from nightmares about monsters or shadows, but something in her face stopped me. It wasn't fear from imagination. It was real, sharp, and trembling. "Someone upstairs?" I repeated carefully. "What do you mean, honey?" Her eyes flicked toward the ceiling just for a second, but that second was enough. A faint creak followed, one that didn't come from wind or pipes. It was footsteps, slow, deliberate. I froze. For a heartbeat, I couldn't move. My thoughts scrambled. Maybe it was the cat or a branch against the roof. But we didn't have a cat. And the roof was metal. Nothing would sound like that. "Stay here," I told her, my voice quieter than I meant it to be. "Don't move, okay?" She nodded, but her small hand reached for mine before I could stand. I felt the tremor in her fingers. I gave her a reassuring squeeze, then gently freed myself and picked up the flashlight from the shelf. As I moved toward the staircase, my heart beat so loud it drowned the creaks of the steps. Every sound seemed amplified, the rustle of the curtains, the faint hum of the refrigerator, even the ticking of that clock that suddenly sounded much too loud. When I reached the landing, I hesitated. The door to the attic was slightly ajar, just enough to show the dark line of the gap. And that's when I realized something chilling. I hadn't opened that attic door in over 3 years, not since the day my husband died. My breath caught. I forced myself to climb the last steps, my flashlight trembling slightly in my grip. "Hello?" I called softly, my voice cracking at the edges. "Who's there?" No answer. I pushed the attic door open. The air that met me was stale, heavy with dust and time. I shone the beam around old boxes, a trunk, some photo albums. Everything was just as I'd left it, and yet something felt off. The rocking chair in the corner, the one that used to belong to my mother-in-law, was moving. Back and forth, back and forth. Slowly. My knees went weak. "Is someone here?" I whispered again, my throat dry. Nothing, only the creaking of that chair. I was about to step closer when a sound froze me completely, a faint humming. A melody. Low and familiar. The same lullaby I used to sing to Lily when she was a baby. But it wasn't coming from me. It was coming from the far corner of the attic behind the curtain that covered the small storage space. My flashlight beam wavered and my hands started to shake. The humming grew louder. Then suddenly it stopped. And a whisper followed. "Why did you lock me away?" My breath hitched. I stumbled back, bumping into a stack of boxes. One fell, spilling old photographs across the floor. In the faint beam of light, I saw one photo lying face up of me, my husband, and someone else. Someone I had spent years trying not to remember. Someone who shouldn't have been in that attic. I didn't realize I was crying until Lily's small voice echoed from the bottom of the stairs. "Mom, are you okay?" I tried to answer, but my throat wouldn't let me. The truth was rising thick and suffocating, like something I'd buried long ago was clawing its way back up. And for the first time in years, I felt the weight of what I'd ignored, what I'd chosen to forget. Whatever was up there with me, it wasn't just in my head, it was part of my past. And it was no longer willing to be silent. I didn't sleep that night. Even after I'd gone back downstairs and tucked Lily into bed beside me, my mind kept replaying what I'd seen: the rocking chair, the lullaby, the whisper that sounded too real to be a dream. Every creak of the floorboards made my body tense. Every sigh of the house felt like a breath behind my shoulder. By morning, I'd convinced myself it had to be exhaustion. That maybe, somehow, grief could twist memories into shapes that didn't belong. But deep down, I knew better. I'd been avoiding that attic for years for a reason. Lily woke up before sunrise, rubbing her eyes. "Did you see them, Mom?" she asked softly. "Them?" I echoed, my stomach tightening. "The person upstairs," she said, her small voice serious. "I heard them humming again when you went up, but I didn't want to come." A chill ran through me. "You heard the humming, too?" She nodded. Her brown eyes, so much like her father's, searched my face for answers I didn't have. "Who is it, Mom?" I forced a smile that didn't reach my eyes. "Probably just the house, settling sweetheart. Old houses make sounds sometimes." But Lily frowned. No, it wasn't the house. Her words sank into me like stones into water. After breakfast, when she left for school, I stood at the bottom of the staircase staring at the attic door. The sunlight filtered in through the window beside it, catching the dust that danced in the air. The house seemed peaceful in the daylight, as if mocking me for last night's fear, but I couldn't shake the image of that photograph, the one that had fallen face up among the others. Me, my husband, and her. Mara. The name alone was enough to stir an ache I'd buried deep. Mara was my husband's younger sister. Beautiful, fragile, and always a little too lost for her own good. She'd lived with us for a few months before she disappeared, or before I told everyone she'd gone to stay with a friend in another town. That was the last time anyone asked about her, and I made sure of it. I swallowed hard, my hands trembling as I climbed the stairs again. The attic door was still slightly open. For a long moment, I just stood there, listening. Nothing, no humming, no whispering. I pushed the door wider. The chair was still, the air still stale. I picked up the fallen photograph, brushing the dust from its surface. Mara's smile looked so alive it hurt. She'd been sitting between us, her head tilted against my shoulder. That day had been the last time we were truly a family, until everything changed. A faint sound snapped me back, something shifting behind the curtain again. My flashlight beam trembled across the space. "Who's there?" I called, my voice sharper than before. The curtain swayed, just slightly. I took a deep breath and pulled it back. Nothing. Only the small crawl space filled with boxes and old furniture. But the smell hit me, next musty, damp, and something else underneath it. Something metallic. The flashlight caught something glinting beneath an old trunk. I knelt, moving aside a few scattered papers. My hand brushed against a small locket, tarnished but familiar. My chest tightened. I opened it slowly. Inside was a tiny photograph. Mara and Lily, taken when Lily was just a baby. I didn't even remember that moment being captured. Suddenly, a voice soft and almost childlike broke the silence. "Do you still tell her I went away?" I froze. The attic air grew heavier, pressing against my lungs. "Who's there?" I whispered again, though my heart already knew the answer. The voice came from behind me, this time close enough to feel its chill against my neck. You told everyone I left, but you never told her why. I turned, the flashlight trembling in my grip. The chair was rocking again. Slow, steady, deliberate. And for the first time I saw her, a pale shape sitting there, eyes hollow but familiar. Her hair tangled and dark. Her expression not angry, not vengeful, just sad. So heartbreakingly sad. Mara, I breathed. She tilted her head. You hear me now, she said softly. After all this time. My legs gave out and I sank to the floor. My voice broke. You're not real. But she smiled faintly. Then why are you crying? Tears blurred my vision. Because I can't do this again. I can't lose you again. Her expression changed then, as if the words reached a wound that never healed. You didn't lose me, Evelyn. You locked me away because you couldn't bear what I knew. The flashlight flickered once, then twice, before going out completely. I was left in the dark, the sound of her voice wrapping around me. You thought forgetting would make it go away, but the truth doesn't stay buried. When the light came back on, the chair was still, the attic empty, only the locket remained in my palm. And from the doorway, Lily's voice called again. Mom, who are you talking to? I swallowed hard, my throat raw. No one, sweetheart, I whispered. Just cleaning up. But I couldn't bring myself to meet her eyes when she climbed the stairs, because deep down, I knew the truth was no longer content with staying hidden. The house had started remembering, and soon, so would I. The following days were a blur of unease. Every corner of the house seemed to whisper with memories I'd tried so hard to silence. Lily noticed my distraction, though she didn't press. She'd inherited that quiet intuition from her father, the way she could sense when something wasn't right but didn't yet have the words for it. At night, I heard the sounds again, the faint creak of floorboards above, the gentle hum of a tune I'd once used to soothe my daughter to sleep. Only now, that same lullaby filled me with dread. By the third night, I couldn't pretend anymore. Something or someone was trying to reach me. I sat at the kitchen table long after midnight, staring at the locket that hadn't left my pocket since I found it. My hands trembled as I opened it again, tracing Mara's smile with my thumb. Why now? Why, after all these years, was she reaching out? I didn't hear Lily's footsteps until she was beside me, rubbing her eyes. You're awake again, she murmured sleepily. I forced a smile, couldn't sleep. She climbed onto the chair across from me, her small legs swinging. Was it the humming again? I hesitated. You heard it too? Lily nodded, yawning. It's the same song you used to sing to me, but it sounds sad now. My throat tightened. What do you mean sad? She's crying when she hums, Lily said softly. I can tell. The air in the kitchen grew cold. Lily, I whispered, where did you hear it? She looked toward the ceiling. From the attic? Something in her tone, calm, certain, almost knowing, made my blood run cold. That night, after she went back to sleep, I stood at the foot of the attic stairs again. The air seemed thicker here, heavier. The silence had its own sound, like breath held between two heartbeats. I took one slow step, then another. Halfway up, the lullaby started again. Soft, familiar, desperate. I stopped. Mara. The song faded, then came a whisper, just behind my ear. Why didn't you tell him? I turned sharply, the flashlight beam shaking. The attic was empty again, but the rocking chair was in motion, faster this time. I moved toward it, my pulse pounding in my ears. Tell him what? But the answer didn't come from words. It came from the memory that struck me, vivid, unwelcome, and too real to deny. That night, the argument, the slammed door, the scream that never left my mind. I saw it all again as if it were happening. Now Mara standing by the window, her face streaked with tears, her voice trembling as she said, "He doesn't love you anymore, Evelyn. He loves me." The sound of my own voice shouting back, broken with anger and betrayal. Then the accident, the fall, the silence that followed, and the lie that began everything. She went away. My knees buckled. The beam of the flashlight rolled across the floor, casting wild shadows. "Oh God," I whispered. "What did I do?" A sudden crash startled me. The old trunk had fallen open. Inside were Mara's things. A scarf, a small perfume bottle, a letter. I reached for it with shaking hands. The handwriting was hers. The same looping curls I remembered from birthday cards and grocery lists. "Evelyn, if you find this, it means I couldn't make you understand. I never wanted to take him from you. I just wanted to be seen, to be loved the way you were. But I see now that love isn't taken, it's broken. And I was the one who broke it first. Forgive me." Tears blurred the ink as I read it. My chest ached with a pain that had waited too long to surface. Then I felt it a gentle touch on my shoulder, cold, feather-light. I turned and there she was again. Not angry, not vengeful, just there. Her eyes glistened, and for the first time, I saw no ghost, only sorrow. "You kept it," she whispered, looking at the locket in my hand. I nodded, unable to speak. She stepped closer, her voice trembling. "He never meant to hurt you. Neither did I." A sob broke free from my chest. "I told them you left. I told them you couldn't handle it." "You told yourself that," she said gently, "because it was easier than facing what really happened. I didn't mean to." The words broke apart in my throat. "It was an accident. You slipped. I tried to. I know." Her words silenced me. "You tried to help me," she continued softly. "But by the time you reached me, it was already too late." The attic air shimmered faintly, as though light passed through water. Her form began to fade at the edges, the lullaby returning softer now, almost peaceful. "Why come back?" I asked, my voice shaking. Her eyes met mine. "Because she hears me, your daughter, and she deserves to know the truth that you've carried alone." "No," I whispered, panic rising. "She's just a child." "She's the only one who can set you free," Mara said gently. "You can't keep pretending, Evelyn. Not anymore." And then, as quickly as she'd appeared, she was gone. Only the sound of the rocking chair remained. Slow, even, final, I sank to the floor, clutching the letter to my chest, the truth pressing down like the weight of the years I'd stolen from both of us. From behind me, Lily's voice called again, soft, sleepy, but certain. "Mom, was that Aunt Mara?" I froze. "What did you say?" She stood at the top of the stairs, barefoot in her pajamas, her eyes calm in the dim light. She said it's okay now. She's not mad anymore. I wanted to believe that. I wanted to, so badly. But as I looked into my daughter's innocent face, I knew what came next. It wasn't about forgiveness anymore. It was about confession. Morning light crept through the curtains, painting the walls in pale gold, but it didn't feel like morning. It felt like the silence that follows a storm, heavy, uncertain, trembling with everything that hasn't yet been said. Lily sat at the kitchen table, her cereal untouched, her gaze distant. She wasn't humming, and that was how I knew she'd seen more than I wanted her to. "Mom," she finally said, her voice small, "was Aunt Mara real?" The question made my chest tighten. "What do you mean, sweetheart?" "She talked to me," Lily said matter-of-factly. "Last night, in my dream, but it felt real. She said she used to sing to me when I was little. I froze. The sound of the refrigerator hum seemed to fade away, replaced by the faint echo of that lullaby I couldn't escape. She said she loved you, Lily continued softly, even when you were mad. I pressed a hand to my mouth, the tears stinging before I could stop them. Sweetheart, I whispered, sometimes dreams bring us memories. Maybe that's what you saw. But she shook her head. No, Mom. She said you'd remember soon, and that it's okay to tell the truth. Her words hit me like a slow-breaking wave, the kind that doesn't destroy but drowns. After I dropped her off at school, I didn't go back home. I drove. Aimlessly at first, through the quiet streets of our small town, past the church where Mara used to volunteer, past the park where the three of us, me, her, and my husband, once laughed like nothing could break us. I ended up at the cemetery. I don't know what I expected to find because there was no grave with her name. I never reported her death. The lie I built had erased her completely, as if she'd never existed. But I knew where she was buried, behind our house, beneath the old oak tree that had long stopped blooming in spring. That was the secret I'd carried for years, a secret so heavy that it had reshaped who I was. When I returned home, the air felt different, still, but watchful. The attic door was closed this time, though I could feel her presence, calm and waiting. I went outside. The wind rustled faintly through the dry leaves, and the ground beneath the oak tree seemed to hum softly, almost like it was remembering too. I knelt down, pressing my hand to the cold earth. I'm sorry, whispered, for all of it, for pretending it never happened. A faint breeze brushed my hair, almost tender. For a moment I thought I heard her voice, not angry, not sad this time, just peaceful. When I looked up, Lily stood at the porch, watching me quietly. I didn't even hear her come outside. Mom, she said softly, she's gone now. I blinked. Who? Aunt Mara? Lily said. She said she's not stuck anymore. Tears welled again, hot and unrelenting. How do you know that? Lily smiled faintly, the kind of smile only a child could give when they see what adults refuse to believe. Because she said you finally listened. Something in me broke open, then a space I'd kept sealed for too long. I reached out my arms, and she ran into them. For the first time in years, I felt light enough to breathe. That night, the house was quiet. No footsteps, no humming, just silence. But it wasn't the kind that haunted. It was the kind that healed. I sat by the window in the living room, the locket resting in my palm. I opened it again and traced Mara's face with my finger. The edges of the photo were worn now, the colors fading. I kept you, I whispered. Even when I tried to forget you, I couldn't. For a moment, the air shimmered again, a soft glow in the corner of the room, and I knew she was there, not trapped, not angry, just watching. You were always stronger than you thought, her voice seemed to say, gentle as wind through leaves. Now she'll grow up knowing the truth. Don't hide anymore. The glow faded, but the warmth lingered. I looked toward the staircase. The attic door was still closed, and for the first time in years, I didn't feel afraid of it. It wasn't a place of secrets anymore. It was a resting place for truth. The next morning, I packed a small box. Inside, I placed the locket, the letter, and a framed photo of the three of us. Then I went to the police station. The officer at the desk looked up as I entered. "Can I help you, ma'am?" My voice shook, but I spoke clearly. "I need to report something that happened a long time ago." His brow furrowed. "All right. When did this happen?" I swallowed hard. 12 years ago. My sister-in-law went missing. But she didn't leave. She died, and I need to tell you how. He gestured for me to sit. I did, my hands trembling, my heart thudding painfully against my ribs. But I kept talking. Every word was like a thread being cut loose, painful, but freeing. By the time I finished, my cheeks were wet, but my chest felt lighter than it had in years. When I returned home, Lily was sitting on the porch steps, swinging her legs. She looked up as I approached. "Did you tell them?" she asked quietly. I nodded. "Yes, I told them everything." Lily smiled softly. "Then she can rest now." The wind stirred through the trees again, gentle and warm, and for the first time since that night, I believed her. I took Lily's hand, and together we walked back inside, not as mother and child haunted by silence, but as two souls finally unburdened by truth. And upstairs, the house once filled with echoes finally slept in peace. The days that followed felt quieter in ways I hadn't known were possible. Not the tense, watchful quiet of fear, but the gentle, fragile kind that comes after confession. A quiet that allows the heart to breathe again. The police had opened a file on Mara's disappearance. There were questions, so many questions, but for once I didn't run from them. I told the truth as best I could. How the argument began, how I'd shouted, how she'd slipped, how my fear turned into denial so fast that I didn't even recognize myself. There was no accusation, no cuffs, no condemnation, only the slow, steady process of truth unfolding. Some nights I still woke to the sound of creaking wood, my body stiff with the memory of that attic. But when I opened my eyes, the air was still, safe. Lily, meanwhile, seemed lighter too, as if the shadow that had lingered over our home had finally lifted from her small shoulders. She played in the yard again, humming the lullaby that used to haunt me, only now it sounded like something new, like a memory that had been forgiven. One evening, after dinner, she asked, "Mom, are you still sad about Aunt Mara?" I paused before answering. "Sometimes," I said softly. "But sadness can be gentle, Lily. It reminds us that we once loved someone deeply." She thought about that for a moment. "So, it's okay to be sad?" "Yes," I said, smiling faintly. "It's okay to be sad. It means you remember." She nodded and returned to coloring at the table, her little hands moving in steady strokes. I looked out the window. The oak tree stood in the distance, its branches swaying lightly in the evening breeze. There was no heaviness around it anymore, only calm. I could almost hear Mara's laughter somewhere in the wind, faint, warm, and free. A part of me wanted to leave this town, to start fresh somewhere far away, but another part, the braver one, knew I needed to stay. To live in the place where the truth had finally found me, to make peace with the ghosts that had once ruled my life. That night, I sat by Lily's bedside as she drifted to sleep. The soft glow of her nightlight made her face look impossibly peaceful. She turned slightly and mumbled, half asleep, "Mom," she says, "thank you." I froze. "Who, sweetheart?" "Aunt Mara," Lily murmured, her voice already fading into dreams. "She says thank you for setting her free." Tears filled my eyes, but this time they didn't sting. They felt like rain after drought, healing, not punishing. When I returned downstairs, I poured myself a cup of tea and opened the window. The night was cool and gentle. For the first time in years, I wasn't afraid of the dark. I let the silence wrap around me like an embrace. Then something caught my eye, a small flicker of light near the oak tree. Not a reflection, not a trick of the moonlight, just a faint shimmer, like a candle burning far away. I stepped outside barefoot, the grass cool beneath my feet. The closer I got, the clearer it became, a faint, glowing outline near the roots of the tree. For a moment, I could almost see her Mara, smiling faintly, her face soft and unburdened. She didn't speak. She didn't need to. The warmth in her eyes said everything words never could. I whispered, "I'm sorry," one last time. And as I said it, she nodded and faded, leaving behind a peace so deep, it felt like silence had finally learned how to forgive. The following morning, I found Lily sitting by the window, watching the sunlight dance through the trees. "It's prettier today," she said. "What is?" I asked. "The house," she said simply. "It feels happy." I smiled. She was right. There was something alive in the air again, like the walls had stopped holding their breath. Later that week, I began clearing the attic for good. I packed away the old boxes, the broken memories, the things that had gathered dust for too long. I found another photograph I'd never seen before, Mara holding Lily as a baby, laughing as Lily tugged at her necklace. The sunlight in that picture seemed to pour right off the paper. I framed it and placed it on the mantel beside one of my husband. A quiet reminder that families are complicated, messy, and fragile, but love, even when broken, still finds its way home. That evening, as I stood looking at those two photos side by side, I realized that forgiveness doesn't erase the past. It simply lets you live with it. Lily came running in from the garden, holding a single acorn. "Look, Mom, the tree dropped this for me." I took it from her hand and smiled. "Maybe it's a gift," I said. "From Aunt Myra." "Maybe," I whispered, tucking the acorn into a small jar. "Maybe from her." And as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in soft pinks and golds, I realized something simple but profound. Some truths don't destroy. They redeem. Mara's memory would always live here in the laughter that returned to our home, in the warmth of my daughter's smile, and in the quiet forgiveness that finally found its voice. The house was no longer haunted, it was home again. And upstairs, the old attic sat silent, not with secrets anymore, but with peace. It's strange how life settles after chaos, how, when the storm finally passes, you begin to notice the smallest things again. The way sunlight rests on the kitchen counter, the smell of coffee in the morning, the laughter of a child in another room. These were the pieces of my life I hadn't truly felt in years. Weeks passed, and the investigation concluded quietly. The police confirmed what I already knew: it had been an accident. No foul play, no trial, just a story of two sisters who lost themselves to jealousy and grief. They called it a tragic domestic incident. Cold words for something that had shaped my entire life. The local paper didn't print it. No one whispered in the grocery store. It was as if the town had decided to let sleeping ghosts stay buried. Maybe they'd always known something was off, but kindness or fear had kept them silent. I began to work from home again, painting mostly. Not landscapes or portraits, but abstract shapes that made sense only to me, swirls of memory and emotion. I called them echoes. Each brushstroke felt like a confession, each color a small redemption. Lily often joined me, sitting beside me with her crayons, humming quietly while she drew. Sometimes she'd hum Mara's lullaby, and though it once made my stomach twist, now it felt like a heartbeat, familiar, loving, whole. One evening, she looked up from her sketchbook. "Mom, what happens to people when they die?" The question hung in the air like soft rain. I set down my brush. "Well," I said carefully, "I think they stay with us in little ways, in memories, in the things they taught us, maybe even in the songs we remember." She nodded slowly. "Like Aunt Mara?" "Yes," I said, my throat tight. "Exactly like Aunt Myra." She smiled then, one of those small, knowing smiles that felt older than her years. "I think she's happy now." I didn't answer, but I felt it too. Later that night, after Lily had gone to bed, I went up to the attic one last time. Not out of fear this time, but closure. The air was cool, still carrying that faint scent of dust and thyme. I'd cleaned most of it weeks ago, but one small box remained in the corner, sealed with yellowed tape. Inside were things I hadn't been ready to touch. Mara's journals, her letters, a faded scarf that still smelled faintly of her perfume. I sat on the floor and opened one of the journals. The handwriting flowed like a river of thoughts, some joyful, some broken. Evelyn is the strongest person I know, one entry read. I wish she could see herself the way others do. I wish she'd stop being so afraid to need someone. Tears blurred my vision. I turned another page. I think I made her angry again today. I always do. I don't mean to. It's like everything I touch becomes something she has to fix. But I love her. I really do, even when she can't love me back. I closed the journal gently and pressed it against my chest. My heart ached, not with guilt anymore, but with longing for all the moments we'd lost, for the words we'd never said. A soft creak came from behind me. I turned, half expecting to see her again, but the room was empty. Still I spoke aloud, my voice trembling but steady. Thank you, Mara, for forgiving me, for letting me start over. The window rattled slightly, a whisper of wind perhaps, or maybe her answer. When I left the attic, I didn't close the door behind me this time. I left it open, letting light spill in from the hallway. The house didn't need secrets anymore. In the weeks that followed, I started a new tradition with Lily. Every Sunday, we'd sit under the oak tree with a basket of flowers and tea. We'd talk about small things, her friends, her drawings, what clouds looked like. Sometimes we'd talk about Mara, too. She was kind, Lily would say, but sad. She was both, I'd reply. People can be both. Lily would nod, thoughtful, then pluck a blade of grass and twist it between her fingers. You're not sad anymore, Mom. I smiled faintly, not the same kind of sad. And it was true. My grief had softened into something almost tender, a quiet companion, not a cage. I could miss Mara without drowning in it. I could love her without guilt. One afternoon, I caught Lily writing something in her little notebook. What are you working on? I asked. She hesitated, then handed it to me. On the first page, in uneven letters, she'd written, "The Girl in the Attic, a story about remembering." I blinked, my throat tightening. You're writing a story? She nodded proudly. About you and Aunt Mara, but it's not scary. It's about love. I swallowed a sob and smiled. That sounds perfect, sweetheart. She grinned. Can you help me finish it? Always, I said, wrapping my arms around her. Always. That night, as she slept with her notebook still clutched in her hand, I looked out the window one last time. The oak tree swayed gently in the moonlight, its leaves whispering softly like a lullaby carried through time. And in the quiet, I could almost hear Mara's voice again, not from the attic, not from the shadows, but from within. You did it, Evelyn. You finally came home. I smiled, letting the tears fall freely. For once, they didn't hurt, because some ghosts don't come to haunt. They come to guide you back to yourself. The seasons began to change, almost imperceptibly at first. The air grew cooler, the mornings quieter. Autumn brushed over our small town like a sigh of relief, leaves drifting in soft spirals, the scent of cinnamon and wood smoke weaving through the streets. It had been months since the truth came out, and in that time, our lives had taken on a new rhythm. Gentle, steady, alive. Lily had started school again, and every afternoon she came home with stories about her teacher, her new best friend Nora, the art projects they made together. Her laughter filled the house, echoing through the very walls that once trembled with silence. And me, I was finally learning how to live with the past, not against it. The attic had become something else entirely, a studio. I moved my easel there, hung string lights across the beams, and painted in the glow of that space that had once held only shadows. Each brushstroke felt like breathing again. The air didn't feel heavy anymore. It felt open, forgiving. Sometimes I still felt Mara's presence not as a figure or a voice, but as a feeling, a warmth in the room, a whisper in the leaves. I talked to her while I painted, not because I expected an answer, but because it felt right to include her. After all, every color I laid down was a conversation we never finished. One afternoon, as I painted, Lily wandered up with her notebook. "Mom," she said, "my teacher said we have to write about the bravest thing we've ever done." I smiled, wiping my hands on a cloth. "What are you going to write about?" She thought for a moment. "I think about when we told the truth." My breath caught. "You mean about Aunt Mara?" She nodded. "You told everyone even though it was scary? That's brave." Tears pricked my eyes. I walked over and knelt in front of her, brushing a curl from her forehead. "You were brave too, you know? You helped me find the truth." She smiled. "I think Aunt Mara helped both of us." "Yes," I whispered. "She did." That night, after Lily went to bed, I found myself standing at the window again, looking out toward the oak tree. The moon hung low, casting silver light across the yard. The branches swayed gently, and I could almost imagine her there, sitting beneath them, not trapped, not restless, just at peace. I whispered softly, "We're okay now." And for the first time, I believed it. The next morning, I got a letter in the mail from the county records office. My hands trembled as I opened it. Inside was a certificate, dated and official. Death record, Mara Ellison. Her name, finally written where it belonged. Her existence, no longer erased. I didn't cry, not this time. I smiled, whispering a quiet thank you to the universe, to time, to forgiveness itself. That weekend, Lily and I held a small ceremony under the oak tree. Just the two of us. We laid fresh flowers at the base, white lilies and wild daisies, Mara's favorites. Lily placed the jar with the acorn beside them. "Do you think she knows?" Lily asked softly. I nodded. "I think she's known all along." We stood there for a while, hand in hand, listening to the wind. There was no heaviness, only warmth. That night, the house seemed to hum with something gentle, not quite silence, not quite sound. I fell asleep to the faintest trace of the lullaby, but this time, it wasn't haunting. It was a song of gratitude. In my dreams, I saw her one last time. We stood in the attic together, though it wasn't dark anymore. Sunlight poured through the window, and everything was alive with color. Mara looked the way I remembered her before everything fell apart. Her smile soft, her eyes bright. She reached out and took my hand. "You did what I couldn't," she said. "You let go." I felt tears rise, but I was smiling. I thought I'd lost you forever. "You never lost me," she said gently. "You just forgot how to look." Then she turned toward the window, her form glowing brighter with each passing second. "Take care of her," she added, nodding toward where Lily played below in the garden. "I will," I promised. She smiled one last time. "Then I can rest?" And with that, she stepped into the light, dissolving into the sun, leaving only warmth behind. When I woke the next morning, my pillow was damp with tears, but my heart felt whole in a way it never had before. That day, Lily and I went to the farmer's market. We bought apples, honey, and a tiny sapling, a small oak. When we returned home, we planted it beside the larger one. Lily patted the soil carefully and looked up at me. "Now she'll always have company," she said. I smiled, the sunlight glinting through the trees. "Yes, she will." As we stood there, I realized something simple and profound, that life doesn't stop at forgiveness. It begins there. We'd been two lost souls carrying a ghost, and now we were simply two people living again. That evening, as dusk settled, I walked through the house one last time before bed. I stopped by the staircase, looking toward the attic door left open at the top. For a moment, I thought I saw a faint glimmer of light spill through warm, golden, almost like sunlight on water. I whispered, "Good night, Mara." And in the stillness that followed, I swore I heard her reply, soft, steady, and full of love. "Good night, sister." The floorboards didn't creak anymore. The air didn't shiver. The house, at last, was free. And so was I. Winter arrived softly that year, like a secret the earth whispered only to those who were quiet enough to listen. The mornings were slower, wrapped in mist, the air sharp with the scent of frost. Each breath felt visible, like proof that we were still here, still breathing after everything. Lily loved it, of course. She'd rush outside every morning, bundled in her red coat, trying to catch snowflakes before they melted on her mittens. Her laughter carried through the cold, bright, and pure. Sometimes, when I watched her, I'd think about how close I'd come to losing her too, not in body, but in spirit. Secrets can do that. They can pull people apart without ever touching them. But now our home was full again. The walls didn't hold whispers anymore. They held warmth. The attic lights glowed faintly each night, the paintings catching soft shadows that danced when the wind moved. It no longer felt like a place of sorrow, it felt like a tribute. That December, I decided to host a small gathering for the first time in years. Just a few friends, neighbors, and Lily's classmates' parents. The kind of gathering that once would have made me anxious, but now felt like an act of gratitude. The evening came with the faint smell of pine and cinnamon. Candles flickered. Laughter filled the living room. People commented on my paintings, especially the ones from the attic. "Your work feels alive," one woman said, her gaze soft, like it remembers something. I smiled gently. "It does?" Later, when everyone had gone and Lily had fallen asleep near the fireplace, I sat by the window with a cup of tea, watching the snow fall thick and slow. For a moment, I thought I saw a flicker of movement outside, near the oak tree, a shimmer of light, faint but steady. I didn't flinch this time. I only smiled. "Merry Christmas, Mara," I whispered. The light pulsed once, softly, like a heartbeat answering. That night, I dreamt again. Not of ghosts or confessions, but of laughter. Of two sisters sitting together beneath a tree, their hands dusted with paint, their hearts lighter than they'd ever been in life. When I woke, the house was quiet, the kind of quiet that holds peace, not fear. Over breakfast, Lily looked up suddenly. "Mom, can we write a letter today?" "A letter?" I asked. "To Aunt Mara," she said simply, as if it were the most natural thing in the world. "We can bury it under her tree," I smiled. "Of course." She took her time writing it, her tongue poking slightly out in concentration. When she was done, she folded the small sheet of paper neatly and handed it to me. "Can you write one too?" I hesitated, then nodded. Mine was short, simple. "Mara, thank you for forgiveness, for love, for reminding me that truth can heal." We bundled up and went outside together. The air bit at our cheeks, but it was the kind of cold that made you feel alive. We knelt at the base of the oak, brushed away a layer of snow, and buried the letters beneath the roots. Lily pressed her hands against the earth. "Do you think she'll read them?" Yes, I whispered. She already has. As we stood, a soft wind swept through the trees, swirling snow around us like confetti. The branches creaked, and for a moment, I swore I heard that familiar lullaby, just a few notes, carried gently on the breeze. Lily turned to me, her eyes wide. Did you hear that? I nodded, tears forming that didn't feel like sorrow. Yes, sweetheart, I did. We stood there in the falling snow, hand in hand, listening to the wind. The world felt full, not empty, not haunted, just alive. When we went back inside, Lily ran upstairs to change, and I lingered in the hallway. My gaze drifted toward the attic door, still open, light spilling softly from the window above. The air there shimmered faintly, like dust caught in sunlight. I climbed halfway up the stairs and paused, resting my hand on the railing. You can rest now, I said quietly. You're home. And though no sound answered, the stillness felt like an embrace. That evening, as Lily slept curled up beneath her blanket, I sat by her bedside. The snow outside glowed silver under the moonlight. I reached out, brushing a strand of hair from her forehead. You'll grow up brave, I whispered, and honest and kind. The world will try to make you forget those things, but don't. She stirred faintly, her lips curving into a soft smile even in sleep. Love you, Mom, she murmured. I kissed her forehead and I love you too, my heart. Then, for reasons I couldn't explain, I walked one last time to the window. The oak tree stood tall and strong, its branches dusted white, its roots deep and steady beneath the snow. Two small shapes of light shimmered faintly beneath it, side by side the faint outline of two oaks growing together, intertwined. And I knew then that she would never really be gone. She was in the laughter that echoed through the house, in the warmth that filled our rooms, in every truth we dared to speak aloud. She was in us. As I turned away, the lullaby hummed softly through the wind, one last time, fading, peaceful, whole. It wasn't a haunting anymore. It was a homecoming. By spring, everything had changed. Again, but this time, it was the kind of change that didn't hurt. It was quiet, gentle, and patient. The oak tree outside our window was full again, its branches heavy with new leaves that shimmered in the morning light. Beneath it, two small saplings grew side by side, green and reaching, like a promise whispered back to the earth. I watched them every morning while making breakfast. There was something steady about them, something that reminded me that even the things we bury can grow into beauty if we let them. Lily was taller now, her hair brushing her shoulders, her laughter carrying a new confidence. She had started keeping a journal of her own, pages full of stories, questions, and drawings of trees and stars. Do you still think she can hear us? She asked one evening, as we sat on the porch watching the sunset. Yes, I said softly. But not like before. Not in the attic or in dreams. In here. I touched my chest. She lives where love stays. Lily nodded, thoughtful. Then, I'll keep her there too. Sometimes, I'd still feel Mara's presence not as a chill or a whisper, but as warmth, the kind that rises behind your ribs when you remember someone with peace instead of pain. And when Lily hummed her lullaby, I'd find myself joining in, our voices blending gently through the still air. That spring, I got an invitation from the local art gallery. They'd seen my paintings and wanted to feature them in a small exhibit titled Echoes of Home. I hesitated at first. Sharing my work meant sharing the story behind it. But maybe that was the point. Maybe the truth didn't belong to me alone anymore. It belonged to the world that needed to know what forgiveness could look like. When the night of the exhibit came, I stood in the softly lit gallery, surrounded by people who studied the canvases with quiet reverence. Each painting told a fragment of our story, shadows and light, grief and healing, the way memory shifts but never disappears. One painting drew the most attention: the attic window. It showed a faint silhouette sitting near a beam of light, a locket open in her hands. The colors were muted, but there was warmth in them, a sense of release. A woman approached me as she looked at it. "It feels like she's forgiving herself," she said. "She is," I replied softly. "We both are?" The woman smiled. "Then it's beautiful." After the event, when the guests had left and the lights dimmed, I stood alone before that painting. My reflection merged with the figure on the canvas. For the first time, I didn't see a ghost in her shape, I saw myself. When I got home that night, the air was warm with the scent of rain. Lily was already asleep, her little notebook open on her bedside table. I leaned down to kiss her forehead, then glanced at what she'd written. "Aunt Mara doesn't sing anymore. She listens now. I think that's what peace sounds like." I sat there for a long time, my hand resting gently on the page. The next morning, I decided to visit the oak tree again. The grass was soft beneath my bare feet, and the air hummed with the quiet rhythm of spring. I brought 2 cups of tea, one for me, one for her, and placed them side by side at the roots. "I hope you like jasmine," I whispered with a small smile. "You always said it smelled like new beginnings." The wind moved through the branches, scattering petals onto my lap. For a heartbeat, I swore I felt her beside me, a soft warmth brushing against my shoulder, a presence more real than shadow. "Thank you," I said, "for teaching me how to remember without fear." And then, for the first time in years, I laughed a real, unguarded laugh that came from somewhere deep. The sound echoed across the yard, mingling with the rustle of leaves. When I went back inside, I stopped at the staircase and looked up at the attic. It was filled with light now, sunlight pouring through the window, catching dust motes that floated like tiny stars. My easel stood in the center, a new canvas, blank and waiting. I climbed the stairs slowly, running my hand along the banister. I hadn't been afraid of this space for months, but today it felt different, not like a memory, but like a beginning. I sat down before the empty canvas and picked up my brush. For a long moment, I didn't move. I just listened to the house, to the quiet, to the faint rhythm of my own heartbeat. Then, slowly, I began to paint. Not shadows this time, not echoes, light, pure forgiving light. When I finished, I stood back and stared. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't meant to be. It was a reflection of loss, of love, of the way life keeps moving even when it feels like it shouldn't. And in that quiet room, I whispered the words that had taken me years to find. "I forgive you. I forgive me." A soft breeze stirred through the open attic window. The curtains fluttered gently, brushing against my arm like a blessing. And for the briefest moment, I thought I heard her voice again, but not from far away. It came from within. "Then we're free." The words settled into me like sunlight through glass. Downstairs, I heard Lily calling, "Mom, breakfast ready?" I smiled, setting down the brush. "Coming, sweetheart." As I walked toward the stairs, the morning light spilled ahead of me, filling every corner of the house with warmth. The air smelled of jasmine, faint and familiar. And in that golden quiet, I realized the truth I'd ignored for years had finally become the truth I could live with. That summer arrived in soft waves of warmth, the kind that settled gently instead of burning. The days stretched long and slow, filled with the hum of cicadas, the laughter of children, and the scent of lavender drifting through open windows. Life, in all its fragile beauty, had found its rhythm again. Lily was out of school for the season, her days spent barefoot in the garden, sketching beneath the oak trees. The smaller sapling she'd planted beside the old oak was thriving, its branches thin, but determined, reaching upward as if it knew exactly what it was growing toward. I often joined her there, sitting in a lawn chair with a cup of tea, painting while she drew. Sometimes we spoke, sometimes we didn't. We didn't need to. The silence between us wasn't heavy anymore, it was full. One afternoon, she looked up from her sketch pad and said, "Mom, do you think we'll ever move?" The question caught me off guard. "Why do you ask?" "I like it here," she said. "It feels like home now, but sometimes I wonder if Aunt Mara would want us to stay." I looked toward the oak tree, its branches swaying gently in the summer breeze. "I think she'd want us to live," I said softly, "wherever that takes us." Lily thought for a moment, then nodded. "But if we go somewhere new, we'll plant another tree." "Yes," I said, smiling, "we will." As the weeks passed, I found myself painting less and writing more. I'd never thought of myself as a writer, but the words came like water, slow at first, then rushing. I wrote about the silence that follows grief, about the way truth heals in pieces, about the ghosts we create when we hide from what we've done. It wasn't confession this time, it was reflection. Sometimes, after finishing a few pages, I'd walk outside just as the sun began to set. The sky would turn gold, then crimson, then lavender. The light always fell in the same place across the branches of the oak tree, bathing it in a glow so soft it almost felt holy. And each evening I'd whisper, "Thank you," though I never specified to whom. Maybe to Mara, maybe to life, maybe to the version of myself who had finally learned how to let go. That August, I received an unexpected email. A small publishing house, one that specialized in personal essays, had read about my gallery exhibit and wanted to feature my story. Not my art, my story. They asked if I'd be willing to share it under my own name. The thought terrified me. To lay my past bare for strangers felt like reopening a wound. But then I remembered what Lily had written months ago. It's not scary, it's about love. So I said yes. The article came out in early September. It was titled "The Attic and the Oak, A Story of Forgiveness." The editors had done a beautiful job, gentle, respectful, honest. They didn't sensationalize what happened. They simply told it as it was. The story of a woman who carried guilt like a second heartbeat, and the sister who helped her set it down. I didn't expect the reaction it received. Letters began arriving from people I'd never met, women and men who shared their own confessions, their own buried grief, their own ghosts. Some said the story gave them courage to tell the truth. Others said it made them forgive someone they thought they never could. I read each letter carefully, sometimes crying, sometimes smiling. Each one felt like a thread weaving into something larger than me, a tapestry of forgiveness that stretched farther than I'd ever imagined. Lily watched me read them one afternoon, her head resting on my shoulder. "You helped them," she said. I shook my head. "No, sweetheart, we did." Her fingers brushed over the locket I still wore around my neck. "And her too," she whispered. "Yes," I said, my voice trembling. "And her too." That night, we went outside after dinner, lying on a blanket beneath the stars. The summer air was warm, and the sky shimmered with constellations. Lily pointed upward. "Do you think people become stars when they die?" I smiled. "Maybe. Or maybe they become everything that reminds us to look up." She grinned at that, her eyes reflecting the starlight. "Then Aunt Mara must be the brightest one." We lay there in silence for a while, listening to the rustle of leaves, the soft chorus of crickets, the pulse of life all around us. I closed my eyes and let the sound of the night fill me, the rhythm of a world still turning, still forgiving. Later, when Lily had drifted off beside me, I whispered softly into the darkness, "We did it, Mara. We found peace." The wind shifted then, carrying a faint scent of jasmine across the yard. A familiar warmth brushed against my cheek, and though there were no words this time, I knew. She heard me. When I carried Lily inside, I glanced once more toward the oak trees. The moonlight fell across them, silver and soft. The small sapling trembled slightly, its leaves shimmering as if touched by unseen hands. And I knew then, in the quiet certainty of that summer night, that forgiveness wasn't an ending. It was the beginning of everything that would come after. Autumn returned once more, gentle and golden, the kind that makes you nostalgic for moments you're still living. The air smelled of wood smoke and apple cider, and our house seemed to hum softly with life. Every corner carried light now, even the attic, once a cage of silence, felt like a sanctuary. Lily had just turned 9. We celebrated with a small party in the backyard, beneath the oak trees. She wore a crown of daisies, her laughter spilling into the evening air like music. The children played hide and seek between the trees, their voices rising and falling like birdsong. I watched from the porch, my heart full in ways I hadn't thought possible. When the last of the guests left and the house quieted, I went upstairs to tidy. Passing the attic door, I noticed it was slightly open. Normally I would have closed it, but something about it, maybe the soft glow of the fairy lights inside, made me pause. I stepped in. The air was cool, clean, touched by faint traces of lavender. My easel stood in the center, a new canvas half finished, 2 trees side by side beneath a wash of morning light. Lily's handprints, painted in green, dotted the bottom edge. We'd been working on it together. As I stood there, I felt it again, that presence, that calm warmth I'd come to know so well. "Mara," I whispered. For a long time there was only silence. Then a faint whisper of wind stirred the curtains. Not cold, not haunting, just alive. "I wish you could see her," I said softly. "She's becoming everything we dreamed she'd be. Brave, kind, free." The air shimmered slightly, and though I couldn't see her, I could feel her like sunlight on skin. "I think you already do," I added, smiling faintly. The next morning, I woke to find Lily sitting cross-legged on her bed, her notebook open on her lap. "Mom," she said, "I had another dream." "What about, sweetheart?" "It wasn't scary," she said. "Aunt Mara and I were in a field. There were flowers everywhere. She told me something." My breath caught. "What did she say?" Lily smiled, looking down at her notebook. She said, "You don't have to remember me to love me. Just live." My eyes stung with tears. "That sounds like her." Lily nodded. "I think she's really gone now, for good." I reached over, brushing her hair back gently. Then she finally found peace. Lily leaned against me, her voice soft. "And so did you." That day, after I dropped her at school, I stopped by the bookstore in town. On the front display, I noticed something that made me pause, a copy of the magazine that had published my story. A woman nearby picked it up, flipping through the pages. "She's the artist, you know," the cashier said. "Lives right here in town." The woman smiled. "It's a beautiful story. You can feel her heart in every word." I didn't interrupt. I just stood there for a moment, letting their voices wash over me. It wasn't pride, I felt it was gratitude. Gratitude for being able to speak truth aloud and not be crushed by it. When I got home, I went to the attic again, carrying a small wooden box. Inside it were the things that had once kept me tied to The past, the locket, the letter, the old photographs. I set them on the work table beside the canvas and whispered, "Thank you." Then I closed the box and tied it with a white ribbon. Not as a burial, as a blessing. That evening, Lily and I walked to the oak tree together. We dug a small hollow at its base and placed the box inside. "Are we saying goodbye again?" Lily asked. "Not goodbye," I said softly. "Just thank you." We covered the box with earth and sat quietly for a long while. The air around us was still and full, the way it feels right before rain. "I think she's watching," Lily said. "I think she's everywhere," I replied. Later that night, I found myself awake, unable to sleep. I went to the attic one last time, the soft creak of the stairs greeting me like an old friend. The moonlight pooled across the floorboards, silver and forgiving. I stood by the window, looking out at the oak tree swaying gently under the night sky. The smaller sapling beside it gleamed pale gold in the moonlight, its leaves fluttering like whispers. And for the first time, I realized something beautiful. Forgiveness doesn't erase what happened. It simply transforms it into something that can breathe. I thought about Mara then, not as the ghost who haunted me, not as the sister I lost, but as the woman who had loved deeply, broken, painfully, and still managed to guide me home. In that quiet room, I whispered, "Thank you for staying until I could let you go." And just then, the faintest sound reached my ears, a single note of that lullaby carried through the window by the wind. But this time, it wasn't for me. It was for Lily. I smiled, my eyes closing as I let the peace settle in. "She'll be okay," I whispered. "We both will." The moonlight flickered once across the room, soft and fleeting, and then all was still again. The house didn't breathe heavy anymore. It exhaled. Winter returned again, soft, silver, and full of memory. Snow fell quietly over the town, blanketing rooftops and softening the sharp edges of everything it touched. From the window, I watched the flakes settle on the branches of the oak trees, one old and one young, their shapes etched against the pale morning sky. Lily sat at the table near the fire, her hair tied loosely back, a cup of cocoa between her small hands. She was growing so fast. Her laughter had deepened a little, her questions more thoughtful, her silences more knowing. Sometimes when I looked at her, I saw both the child she'd been and the woman she would someday become. We had built a new rhythm together, slow mornings, quiet evenings, laughter threaded between them like golden string. There were still moments of ache, still nights when the past brushed too close, but the pain no longer hollowed me out. It simply reminded me that I had lived and loved and learned. "Mom," Lily said suddenly, breaking the stillness. "Do you ever miss her?" Her words hung in the air. She didn't need to say who. "Yes," I said softly. "All the time." She looked thoughtful. "Even after everything?" "Especially after everything," I whispered. "Missing someone doesn't mean forgetting what happened. It means remembering who they were and who we were with them without letting it hurt anymore." She smiled faintly, tracing her finger along the rim of her mug. "I think she misses you too." The words were simple, but they landed deep. "Maybe," I said, my voice trembling. "But I think she's proud of us now." That afternoon, I pulled out a canvas I'd left unfinished months before. Lily joined me, painting beside me as snow whispered against the windows. I'd taught her to mix colors, to trust her instincts, to let emotion guide her brush. She painted a sunrise bright, layered with hope, and titled it "The Beginning of Us." I painted something different. Two women standing beneath a tree, one fading into light, the other holding a child's hand. It wasn't sad, it was tender. When we finished, Lily studied both paintings. They look like they're part of the same story, she said. I smiled. They are. That evening, after dinner, I found myself sitting by the window again, watching snow gather at the base of the trees. The house was quiet except for the soft ticking of the old clock and the faint hum of the fire. I thought about Mara, about the way her laughter once filled these rooms, about how she'd come back not to haunt but to heal. She had been my mirror, showing me the parts of myself I'd hidden from. And now, every time I saw the oak trees outside, I knew she was still here, not as a ghost, but as something gentler. A reminder that love doesn't end when life does. It just changes shape. Lily came padding down the hallway, holding her blanket, her eyes heavy with sleep. "Can I sleep in your room tonight?" "Of course," I said. She climbed into bed beside me, curling close. The rhythm of her breathing soon fell steady, calm. I brushed a kiss against her forehead and whispered, "You're safe, always." As the night deepened, I felt something stir in the air, that familiar warmth, like a presence made of memory. I didn't open my eyes. I didn't need to. I knew. She was here, watching, smiling, grateful. And in that moment, I finally understood what all of this had meant. The haunting, the forgiveness, the silence that followed. It hadn't been about punishment or pain. It had been about love finding its way through the wreckage. A voice soft and clear brushed against my thoughts. "You did it, Evelyn. You kept her safe. You broke the silence." Tears slipped quietly down my cheeks, but they were warm. "Thank you," I whispered. For a heartbeat, the air shimmered with light, just a glow, nothing more. And then it faded, leaving behind a peace so deep, so absolute, that it filled the room like music. By morning, the snowfall had stopped. The world outside was brilliant and white, sunlight scattering off the branches. The oak trees stood side by side, their trunks dusted with frost, their roots hidden beneath the earth they shared. I brewed coffee and stood by the window, watching the light shift. For years, this view had been a reminder of loss. Now it was something else entirely, a reminder of survival. Lily stirred awake on the couch, yawning. "Mom," she mumbled sleepily, "the house feels happy again." I smiled. "It is." She stretched, then grinned. "Can we make pancakes?" "Of course," I said, laughing softly. "Extra syrup?" "Always." As we cooked together, the kitchen filled with the scent of vanilla and laughter. The world outside shimmered with sunlight, and for the first time in a long time, I felt completely here, not haunted by the past, not fearful of the future, just alive. When breakfast was ready, we sat by the window, plates warm in our hands. Lily looked out toward the oak trees, then turned to me. "Mom," she said, "you know what I think?" "What's that?" "I think she's part of the trees now, so she'll never really leave." I reached for her hand. "I think you're right." We ate in companionable silence, the house filled with the small, steady sounds of living. No footsteps from above, no humming in the dark. Only the soft ticking of the clock, the same one that had once measured our fear, now marking our peace. And as the morning sunlight spilled across the floor, golden and gentle, I realized that the story wasn't ending. It was continuing in every laugh, every truth spoken, every leaf that grew on those two trees outside. Because forgiveness isn't about forgetting, it's about learning how to live again, knowing the past no longer owns you. And that, I think, is the kind of haunting that saves you. Spring returned once more, gentle, green, and full of promise. The snow melted quietly, revealing the earth beneath, damp and rich with new beginnings. From the kitchen window, I watched as tiny buds appeared on both oak trees, the older one bending slightly toward the younger, their branches almost touching. It felt like they were speaking in a language older than words, one of forgiveness, connection, and quiet love. Lily was in the yard, barefoot as always, her laughter spilling across the garden. She was older now, her movements more confident, her questions deeper. "Mom," she called, looking up through the sunlight. "Do you think trees remember?" I smiled, leaning against the doorframe. "Maybe not the way we do," I said. "But I think they hold on to what matters." She grinned, her cheeks flushed pink. "Then they remember her." "Yes," I whispered. "They do." Later that evening, after Lily had fallen asleep, I returned to the attic one final time. It was quiet, bathed in the soft orange of sunset. My last painting stood finished against the wall Sisters Beneath the Oak. It was simple, tender, full of light. I'd painted it with both my hands and my heart, and every stroke felt like a goodbye wrapped in gratitude. I sat for a while, letting the silence speak. The house breathed softly around me. I thought of all the years I'd spent running from this space, from myself, from the truth, and how, somehow, love had led me right back here. I reached out and touched the painting's edge. "We're okay now," I whispered. "All of us." Outside, a breeze stirred. The curtains lifted, and then, so faintly I almost doubted it, I heard that familiar melody one last time. The lullaby. Slow, warm, full. But it wasn't a haunting anymore. It was a farewell. I closed my eyes and listened until the song faded into the heartbeat of the house, into the breath of the wind, into the pulse of life itself. When I opened them again, the sky outside was deep gold, the light lingering just long enough to feel like a blessing. Downstairs, Lily stirred and called out, "Mom, I'm coming, sweetheart." I answered, my voice steady, light. I took one last look at the painting, at the attic that had once held every shadow I feared, and smiled. Then I turned off the light and walked down the stairs, each step soft, unhurried. In the living room, Lily waited by the window, watching fireflies blink across the yard. I wrapped an arm around her, and together, we stood there. Two hearts, one story, finally at peace. Outside, the trees swayed gently, whispering their quiet, endless song. And for the first time in forever, I didn't feel haunted. I felt home,